Hi, I'm Matt McKinney, political and government reporter for RTV6 in Indianapolis.
And I'm Kelly Dickey, communications specialist for Pepper Construction, and this is what happens after CCIM. I was a very involved student with student media. If a professor knew that, he needed to talk to me, they would come look for me in the daily newsroom. Probably should have gone to class a little bit more. Sometimes student media took priority, but I got involved during my sophomore year and I was just hooked. Once I was in, it kind of became a huge focus in my life until I graduated.
I have a similar story, I guess. So I was involved in student media all 4 years, mostly daily news and then a little bit of kind of checking out other things. Still, made it to graduation okay and all that. Student media was definitely the highest priority for me in school, just because I knew how important it was and how easy it would be to get hired afterwards.
There were nights I slept in the newsroom.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell her, or should I?
So,
we don't have a.
I don't have a great story.
Yeah. So we met at Ball State through student media. His story was actually the last story I ever copy edited for the Daily News. But we were just friends at the time. We weren't even close friends. And we just started dating 3 or 4 years after I graduated. How long out of?
I'm not getting into that.
A year and a half after he graduated, a couple more since I graduated, we started dating. But it kind of happened because of the family and the group of friends that we created through student media, because all of us were still close.
Even after graduation, we all got together
Yeah.
and stayed friends and stayed close. So.
Yeah, and we got closer after graduation. So yeah, friendship turned into more.
I'm currently the government political reporter for RTV6 in Indianapolis, covering state, local, and federal politics and government. There's always something going on. There's always a bill to write about or a person to talk to or questions to ask. So I always have to kind of make sure that I'm on top of everything that's going on there. And the newsroom looks to me as an expert in basically anything political that's going on in the area. So I have to make sure that I'm not only well enough versed in it to ask questions and write about the story and do all that, but also talk to my colleagues and say, hey, we should cover this. Here's why. This is really important. Being that voice in the newsroom requires knowing exactly what I'm talking about, knowing the topic, and making sure I'm on it.
I was somebody who knew from the 4th grade that I wanted to be a journalist, and I knew I wanted to be a print journalist. And so it was very traumatic for me whenever I graduated and didn't have a job, whenever everyone thought that I would have a job. And so there was a small period where I had some crippling soul searching to do, but I stuck with it, and thanks to my connections here at Ball State, my former advisor, he actually connected me with an editor that ended up giving me my first job. And I stayed in journalism for 4 years and never thought I would leave, but I did, and now I do PR and marketing for a construction company, which I never thought I would do. Companies need those journalism skills, and they value them, especially in marketing. So now I tell stories for a different audience. Everybody has a story. Everybody connects through storytelling, whether it's the written word, through video, social media. Everybody's looking for that human connection and that human element. And so tapping into that, I think, is critical no matter what avenue you go. No 2 days are alike for me. My job covers a lot of different aspects, including social media, photography, capturing and editing video. My day is spent prioritizing and kind of putting out fires. And they've trusted me with an intern now, so now I'm trying to guide somebody else, through his day and through his career, and God help him.
It's not me, don't worry. I get into the newsroom, I have to kind of figure out what's going on that day. So a lot of times press conferences don't get announced until that day. A lot of times interviews don't come up until that day. So a lot of it is the early part of my day is just figuring out what I'm going to do for the rest of it. Depends on the day. You know, I could be covering different hearings. I could be covering different sessions or meeting with lawmakers about things that they're trying to push. It's always busy because you're being pulled in 3 different directions here. And then towards the end of my day, I usually end up writing web stories and TV stories, which then gets distributed out to all the rest of the newsroom. Then I might go off to another different nightly committee hearing or another new thing, which preps me for the next day. So it's always kind of forward-looking. One of the biggest issues of the legislative session this past year was hate crimes legislation and whether or not it would happen, how it would look, things like that. And for the longest time, it was a certain way. At about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it looked like basically it was going to change because a whole bunch of lawmakers decided to gut it and put it into something else. So I alerted the newsroom. I was like, this is a big deal. We should cover this. And this is as my day was wrapping up. So I thought, I was like, all right, I'm almost done with my day. And then it turned out I wasn't home until 11 p.m. just because of this huge thing that just popped up. So I know everybody in the newsroom appreciated that I was able to flag it down and say, this is changing. This is a really important developing story that we need to cover. So I won an internal building award for that, and I was really proud that I was able to kind of make my mark in the building that day as saying this is an important topic here that we need to talk about.
When I was a reporter, probably the proudest I was with a story was a 2-part series that I did on children homelessness. And it wasn't the typical out on the streets homelessness that everybody I think goes to. It was more like they were getting shifted around from house to house or sleeping on people's couches. And it was a surprisingly high number. That was a really big story for me. You have to get involved with student media. If you're going to be a journalist and that's what you're spending all this money to get an education on, then why wouldn't you go and be a journalist? Because that's what you are whenever you become a member of student media. It builds connections. You learn so much more than what you can in just a classroom.